The interview J.D. Vance doesn't want Donald Trump to see. RK file unearthing it. These are Vance's comments in the weeks after the 2020 election, admitting Joe Biden won it. Now, this is consistent with the old J.D. Vance, who was a vocal Trump critic. But it is, of course, a very far cry from what we hear from Vance now, which, case in point, here he is at the VP debate last week.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020.
All right, Andrew Kaczynski of K-File is out front. So what did you find?
Yeah, Aaron, really shows Donald Trump's stranglehold over the Republican Party, that the question of did Donald Trump lose in 2020 has become seen as a gotcha question. It is not a gotcha question, and Vance's answers around this really reflect his shift from someone who was once calling Donald Trump possibly America's Hitler to somebody who is now parroting his false election rhetoric. But that is not how he always felt. Take a listen to this clip from November of 2020.
I really don't see any reason to think that this is going to become violent or chaotic. I think that when Biden is inaugurated, people will more or less accept it, and it'll be on to the next fight.
And what does Vance say there? He says that Biden is going to be inaugurated. He said that he does not think things are going to get violent, and that is a remarkable shift from him parroting those false election claims today.
It certainly is. Now, he is singing a very different tune now, right? He says things very differently, which shifts, kind of tracks with his run for office. I mean, here's just a few examples.
I think the election was stolen from Trump. Obviously, Republicans, a lot of us don't trust the results of the 2020 election. I happen to think that there were issues back in 2020, particularly in Pennsylvania.
And yet, even in that context, just today, Andrew, he said something that I thought was remarkable, just in the context of the fact that he's now going along with the election was stolen, irregular, all those things. To your point about violence, he said this today.
We discourage rioting. We do not riot. Nobody in this room and nobody in this movement is going to riot.
So what more are you learning about, when he weighs in and what he says about this issue?
Yeah, look, we went through every J.D. Vance when he was nominated, every J.D. Vance tweet. We went through his deleted tweets. We went through his likes. We went through his public statements and interviews after the election, before the election. We did not find one single instance of him claiming that the 2020 election was stolen. In fact, we found the opposite of that until he decides to run for office. And at that point, he is basically making a play for Donald Trump's endorsement. He's a former critic, and we see him out there with the same rhetoric as basically every other candidate in that crowded Republican primary for the Ohio Senate, saying that the election was stolen from Donald Trump.
So it's amazing when you look at that diagram. When he runs, you see the shift. Interesting what Trump will think of what he says today. We do not riot. Nobody in this movement, nobody in this room is going to riot. That was a significant moment.
What little I know about Bob Woodward is that he is, I'm going to use a word here. He is a hack. The guy's a hack. So have I talked to Donald Trump about his calls with Vladimir Putin? No, I've never had that conversation with Donald Trump in my life. But if Donald Trump, even if it's true, look, is there something wrong with speaking to world leaders? No?
We'll dig into that in a moment. That was Senator J.D. Vance, Trump's running mate, responding to stunning new details about the former president's contact with Russian President Putin after he left the White House, which has raised new questions about Trump's relationship with him just weeks before this election. This is all detailed in the legendary journalist Bob Woodward's new book, War, that is out next week. I should note Woodward has been credibly breaking news since before he first reported on Watergate. CNN's special correspondent Jamie Gangale obtained an advanced copy of the book and is here with more revelations. And Jamie, obviously, that was one of them, about all the conversations that he's had, up to 7 with Putin since then. But the other part of this that you reported on this morning that was so fascinating is that, in the height of the pandemic, when Americans are struggling to get COVID tests, Trump actually sent some to Putin in Russia.
Right. And I think there are two key words here. Not only, according to Woodward's book, did Trump send some to Putin, but it was a secret shipment for Putin's personal use. And what Woodward has in his book is a verbatim phone call between Trump and Putin at the time in which they discuss it. So Putin says to Trump, please don't tell anybody you sent these to me. Trump, I don't care, fine. Putin, no, I don't want you to tell anybody because people will get mad at you, not me. They don't care about me. It's just it's remarkable to have that verbatim exchange, which Woodward has. There are a lot of transcripts, documents, other things that back up this book. But it is sort of interesting just to hear Russian President Putin, former KGB agent. I mean, what is going on in that exchange? Is he really concerned about Donald Trump? Is he still the KGB agent playing him? Is it?
Yeah, it sounded like reverse psychology to me.
Right. Correct. Yes. Yeah, I think so.
And then that they've spoken of the 7 times, Woodward reported?
So this is a fascinating story. This comes, Woodward writes that a top Trump aide told him that, this is post-presidency. So a top Trump aide tells Woodward that Trump sends him out of the room and tells him he has to leave because he's about to have a phone call with the Russian president. And according to Woodward's book, the top aide said to Woodward that there have been as many as 7 calls between Trump and Putin since he left the White House. Now, look, it is true what J.D. Vance said, that former presidents do speak to other foreign leaders, but normally it's not a secret, or they give the White House or State Department a heads up, a courtesy of what happens.
That's a very, very good point. Good reporting. Jamie Gingale, thank you.
Sure.
And joining me now is the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and retired 4-star Admiral James Stavridis, who has a new book out today, The Restless Wave. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But given you are someone who has actually been sanctioned by the Kremlin, I just wonder what you make of both of those revelations that Jamie reported on today, including the national security implications of Donald Trump speaking to Putin, given that was at the same time he's urging Republicans not to give Ukraine any more money for its war.
You know, Jamie's husband, Danny Silva, is a marvelous novelist. You couldn't make up fiction like this, frankly. And secondly, I think as an American, you wish that instead of sending COVID tests, he would have sent him some bleach, which was his recommendation, Trump's, to take bleach to get through everything. In all seriousness, I worry about it a lot as a national security practitioner. Number one, what intelligence is Putin, a trained interrogator, a former KGB operative? What is he getting? Number two, what a missed intelligence opportunity for the United States if Trump is having these conversations and not debriefing them. And number three, now that the story breaks, as it inevitably does, Caitlin, the optics of this are terrible for our efforts in Ukraine. Here's our former president allegedly having 7 phone calls with arguably enemy number 1 of the United States.